Hey guys, I would like to welcome you back to the Playoffs of Life podcast. If you're wanting to support the podcast, please like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube, as well as follow us on all the social media platforms and any listening platforms such as Anchor, Spotify, and anything of your liking. We're going to dive right into this episode. We're going to go straight into what Dame Lillard and Jrue Holiday have learned in the last few days, as both players have jumped from their initial teams and have made it on new contenders. If you're wondering, which you probably aren't because this episode's coming out a little bit later after the trade, Damian Lillard is now a Milwaukee Buck. He went through the process with the management in Portland, and they moved him to the Milwaukee Bucks instead of his preferred destination, which was the Miami Heat. Now, I initially don't have a problem with the trade. I truly feel like even though he didn't get to go where he wanted to go, he still goes to probably the best situation he has ever been in his NBA career. Now, Damian Lillard, he may tell you something different. We'll see during media day how that goes. But if my understanding is that with the Damian Lillard trade, a lot of things have changed, not only his perspective, but also the championship window. Now, what I mean by this is the Milwaukee Bucks went above and beyond to make this trade. They heard what Giannis said during free agency about his exit meeting and how he feels about, the championship window, and how Giannis was talking about, possibly not returning if the Milwaukee Bucks cannot keep a championship contender around him. And we all kind of know what that means. We don't really have to dive too deep into how Giannis phrased everything because he's a star player and he's technically right. We honestly don't want to see a product or any player go through what other players of the past have gone through, where they stay on a prospective team and we know how great they are, but we never get to see that greatness at the highest level, mainly because the team never can put the right pieces around them to get any further than maybe a first round or second round exit. Now, we all know that Dame Lillard is one of the highest rated talents. I mean, the man actually got his team to a conference finals by himself. So imagine what he can do with a Giannis right next to him. And we all know that Giannis isn't a slouch either. Giannis is already an NBA champion. He's been through the grind. He's been through each round of the playoffs. And he's proven that when the moment is tough and you need your stars to come through for you, he's the type of player that can get you over the hump. But now you add Damian Lillard to that equation and the whole thing gets blown up. Now you have two superstar, and I truly mean this, two superstar level talents that can get you all the way and can close the game for you. See, the one thing that Giannis probably didn't always have on him is a closer. Now, the year that he won the championship, Chris Middleton was probably looked at as a closer. Jrue Holiday, to me, was mainly looked at as not only the best defensive piece that they had, like an all-around defender, but he was also looked at as the captain and the leader who could keep the team on the right track when it came to winning, because other than that, Giannis would probably try to take over more possessions. The team wouldn't be aligned in the plays that they needed to run. The momentum swings would probably be too big for them. But Jrue Holiday was just the perfect type of two-way leader that they needed. And now you're kind of leaving off the defense by getting Damian Lillard. You're leaning off defense a little bit, but you're adding a tremendous offensive talent. And the reason you want to do that is because last year, Milwaukee really struggled to get past the Miami Heat, not because of their defense, because it actually were low-scoring games at points in that game, and there were points where neither team could score. But if you add Damian Lillard to the equation, now you're not asking Giannis to get you the bucket all the time. Now you're not asking Chris Middleton to get you the bucket. Now you're so dangerous. The space on the court is so good that Dame can either get you a bucket or get the ball where it needs to go. And it doesn't all have to be on him. Now, I'm not saying he's not going to take the last shot, because we know from plenty of historical moments already that Dame will take the last shot. He's not afraid of the moment. And 9 times out of 10, he can make it. So I truly feel like the Bucks have elevated to such a high level of basketball that you can automatically say they're a contender. Not, and I'm not talking about where you see the talent and you say, oh, they look like they can be a contender. I mean, no, they truly are a contender. I truly expect them to be in the finals. I think the East is already set. And I think we're just trying to figure out whether or not the West is going to be the same, whether or not the Nuggets can overcome all the influx of talent and new players that have gone to other teams, because I think the Nuggets are going to have a tougher road than they did last year. But I don't know if that means they'll lose. They're just that good. I can look at them and say instant contender. And now I can also look at the Bucks and say instant contender. So, but we will see because the NBA is wild. Of course, the teams have to stay healthy. Of course, Giannis and Dame have to have that continuity by the time of the playoffs. And we don't know how long they're going to keep it together. I think we could say 2 years, 3 years max, before they have to really figure something out. And also with the Bucks, there's like depth issues. Making this trade, of course, took some things from them. And let's get into that. I actually didn't break down the trade at all, but let's see. So the Bucks received Dame. The Blazers, they received Jrue Holiday, DeAndre Ayton, Tumani Kamara, a Bucks 2029 first round pick, swap rights for the Bucks for 2028 and the 2030 picks. That was the full trade for Damian Lillard. Since we already talked about Dame, let's go ahead and dive into the let's dive into the Celtics. So after that initial trade, the Blazers, of course, flipped Jrue Holiday, as was stated in an earlier report, and they flipped him to the Celtics. So now the Celtics are looking at a whole new dynamic because the Celtics now have Jrue Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis. They made a Kristaps Porzingis trade earlier in this free agency. It's the trade basically where they gave up Marcus Smart. And at the time, you could look at that trade and say, damn, Marcus Smart, defensive player of the year. You're giving it up for Porzingis, who hasn't really stayed too healthy. Now with the Wizards, he was amazing. Yeah, that was probably the best year he's had in a while. But it kind of showed you the all-star talent that Porzingis still obviously has. So the Celtics went out, they took a gamble, they wanted to make a change. That's a pretty drastic change. And then you could honestly say that Jrue Holiday is the replacement for Marcus Smart. I don't know if you can say it's a better replacement. The reason I say that is because Marcus Smart had been there for like 8 years. It's like 7 or 8 years he's been with the Celtics. And we truly believed at this point he was going to stay with the Celtics. That's the type of continuity he had built with the core there. But now he's gone. He's went to Memphis. Jrue Holiday's there. He's looked at as a replacement. He brings the same level of energy, the same level of defense. And I think he actually elevates their offense as well. Because as their lead guard, he's such a great two-way player. He can honestly make any team better the minute he steps on the court. So I think they have the same issues that the Milwaukee Bucks have, where depth will really show itself. Because in the trade to get Jrue Holiday from the Blazers, they had to give up Malcolm Brogdon, who was a sixth man of the year and a really good bench scorer for them, but they also had to give up DeAndre Ayton as well. And I'm sorry, they didn't give up DeAndre Ayton. Actually, they gave up Robert Williams. Robert Williams was a center for the Celtics. They gave him up. And when they gave him up, that pretty much took your backup center depth. So you're looking at Al Horford as probably your backup center now, Kristaps Porzingis as your starter, and then your starting lineup is pretty set. But coming off the bench, you have like Derek White, Peyton Pritchard. You lost Grant Williams in free agency. So pretty much maybe some rookies or some players that they've been trying to develop will really have to take another step in the Celtics lineup in order to keep them afloat. Because we know the regular season is a lot of a grind, but you also want to use that to put players in the right position so you know what you have and what you can go to in the playoffs. Now, I believe the Celtics have such a great front office, coaching staff, and players that they will figure it out throughout the season. I also feel that way with the Milwaukee Bucks. I really feel like the most similar thing about both of these contender teams and instant contenders. Let me say that. I also believe they are instant contenders. So it's really hard to know who's going to be there. but I expect the Bucks or the Celtics to be there. Maybe they'll meet up in the conference finals, and then we'll find out from there. But both teams really are going to suffer from a depth issue and a continuity issue. But throughout the season, they may find those miracles, or they may find those diamonds in the rough in their lineups, and they may find a player that can replace a lot of the production that they lost when making these trades. So now that we got the contenders out the way, let's see if we can dive into the Blazers, who are just as interesting, even though we know they're not competing anytime soon. DeAndre Ayton was going to be traded. He was honestly traded to the Blazers when Damian Lillard trade was made. Now the Phoenix Suns, they earned something in a couple of players like Keon Johnson. They earned Nazir Little. I think they also earned like another player. I can't exactly remember what his name was. And DeAndre Ayton is kind of like the home run for them, because as they were obtaining picks and pick swaps, their draft capital, honestly, is still draft capital until you draft a player. And as valuable as that is, I'm of the belief that a player is the best haul that you can get, especially a young, thriving player that you've seen his talent. He was already a number one pick. Injuries haven't derailed him. Honestly, DeAndre Ayton has gotten a bad rap. I'm not sure about the drama that he had in Phoenix, but that really kind of pushed the narrative about him to the point where it's not a question of his talent. It's a question of his character. And at the end of the day, this is basketball. You do need good character, but he is a great talent. He was a number one pick. He hasn't shown any decline. Really, it's more of like a motor. It's like I said, it's character. Other than that, DeAndre Ayton is a talent that the Blazers can use for years. Like, he is going to be your starting center. And now you also got Robert Williams in the trade that you made for Jrue Holiday when you flipped him. So now you have a just as good a backup center. You have Scoot Henderson as your starting point guard. You have young pieces like Simons, Anthony Simons, Shaden Sharp. Who else do you have in a team? And you just have a buttload of young talent. And we don't think they're going to compete anytime soon, but we do believe that they're going to be interesting to watch. I will be having League Pass to watch this team. The Blazers are definitely a team that I don't expect to win too many games, but I expect to be entertained when I watch them based off their competition level. And putting all this talent together, they're definitely developing their young core, their player development. They're going to stick to it. So shout out to the Blazers for even starting this whole process. All in all, I think every single team has won. I think the dynamic between every team is great. I don't think any trade was lost. When you trade away players and draft picks, it's a sacrifice for any team. It's about who loses the most and who gains the most. I think everyone equally gained what they needed and lost just enough to where it's a risk. But without risk, there's no reward. So shout out to the Milwaukee Bucks, the Celtics, and the Blazers. Hopefully this sheds a great light on the NBA. This season is about to be crazy, absolutely crazy, because these amount of trades happening in like the last few weeks of free agency, I don't know if that's happened before, but it was very exciting waiting on the last little bit of information. And then we still haven't heard about James Harden, but I know we will eventually. That may be a little bit more controversial when we get to it, but when we get to it, we'll figure it out. Thanks, guys, for listening. Hope you have a great day. If you want to support, like, comment, subscribe on YouTube, as well as following us on any of social media platforms and any listening platforms for the podcast, such as Anchor, Spotify, anything your heart desires. Appreciate you guys. Have a great day.